They say betrayal comes in many forms. But what do you call it when the betrayal doesn't start with a touch, but with a wish? It's been almost 2 years since that night. 2 years since something inside me cracked open and never quite closed the same way again. I still remember everything, the rain tapping against the window, the silence in the house that felt louder than any argument ever could, and me, standing there, staring into the dark like I was waiting for something, or someone. I didn't know it yet, but the storm outside wasn't the one I should have feared. The real storm was already inside the house. You know that feeling, when someone really sees you. Not just looks at you, but sees you. When your own husband barely acknowledges your presence anymore, but his brother. He looks at you like you're the only person in the room. That feeling? It's terrifying. It's electrifying. It's dangerous. And it didn't start with a kiss. It didn't even start with a touch. It started with a few words. A quiet confession. A wish. If things were different, it would be you. Just like that. Soft. Simple. But those words lit a fire in me I didn't even know was still there. If I had known what he truly meant that night, what he was really asking for, maybe I would have walked away. Maybe I would have stopped everything before it began. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, confused, and underneath all the guilt and shame, there was something else. I liked it. I liked being noticed. I liked feeling wanted. And in that moment, that single, forbidden moment, I wasn't a wife or a mother or a woman trying to keep it all together. I was just me. And that was the beginning. The beginning of something I never planned, never wanted to admit, and now can never forget. So if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever craved more than what life handed you, if you've ever stood at the edge of a line you swore you'd never cross, then you'll understand. Because sometimes, betrayal doesn't come with secrets and affairs and stolen kisses. Sometimes, it starts with something far more dangerous. A wish. And once that wish is spoken, you can't unhear it. You can't unfeel it. And you sure as hell can't forget it. So stay with me. Because what happened after that changed everything. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because these stories, they come from the deepest corners of the heart. And trust me, what happens next, you won't want to miss. I guess if I'm going to tell the story, really tell it, then I need to start with the truth. My name is Rachel. I'm 38. And most days, I feel like I'm slowly disappearing. I live in a quiet suburb just outside the city, one of those neighborhoods where every lawn is trimmed, the mailboxes all match, and behind every front door is a family that looks perfect from the outside. But inside my house, it's different. I've been married to Evan for almost 12 years. 12 years. It sounds like a lifetime when I say it out loud. And maybe it has been. A lifetime of dinners eaten in silence, kisses that feel more like habits, and conversations that barely scratch the surface. Evan used to be warm. Funny. Charming, even. When we were younger, he'd leave me notes in the kitchen, little drawings on napkins, stupid inside jokes. I used to laugh so much with him, until the laughing stopped. Now, he's always tired. Always busy. Always somewhere else, even when he's sitting right next to me. He works in finance. Long hours. Late nights. And when he is home, he's glued to his phone, scrolling through emails like they matter more than my voice. Sometimes I say things just to see if he's even listening. Sometimes, he isn't. And I try. God, I try to make things work. I cook his favorite meals. I ask about his day. I pretend like I'm not dying a little inside every time he walks past me like I'm a piece of furniture. But it's lonely. It's so damn lonely. The only things keeping me grounded are our 2 kids. Emily's 10. Max is 7. They're beautiful, bright, full of questions and stories and laughter. They're the reason I keep showing up. The reason I stay. Because leaving? That would break them. And staying? Well, that's breaking me. Then, there's Derek. Evan's younger brother. 35. Recently divorced. No kids. And if I'm being honest, I never really saw him that way before. He was just Derek, Evan's little brother who showed up at holidays with wine and a bad haircut, always cracking jokes, always late, always a little too loud. But something changed after his divorce. He started coming around more often. At first, it felt harmless, just a guy who needed family, who needed a place to land while his life fell apart. But then I started noticing the little things. The way he looked at me. The way he actually listened when I spoke. The way he smiled when I walked into a room, like it meant something that I was there. And it felt good. It felt dangerous, but it felt good. Because with Evan, I felt like wallpaper. But with Derek, I felt like someone again. I remember one night, Evan had fallen asleep on the couch with his phone still in his hand. I was in the kitchen, doing dishes I hadn't even used. Derek came up behind me and dried a plate I didn't ask him to. We talked about nothing: movies, the weather, memories from childhood. But there was this pause, this beat in the conversation where he looked at me a little too long. And I felt it. That shift. That spark. The unspoken thing hanging in the air between us. I looked away first. But I felt it. And that moment, that tiny, quiet moment, echoed louder in my chest than any fight I'd ever had with Evan. It was in the little things. The way Derek asked how I was really doing. The way he offered to fix the cabinet Evan had been ignoring for months. The way he noticed when I changed my hair. I started wearing lipstick again. I started looking at myself in the mirror a little longer before going downstairs. Not for Evan. For Derek. Or maybe just for me. But Derek was the reason I remembered I existed. And that scared me. Because I knew what it meant. And I didn't want to admit it. But when someone sees you, when they really see you in a way you've been aching to be seen, it's almost impossible to ignore. And no matter how wrong it felt, there was something inside me that didn't want it to stop. It happened on a Saturday. We were hosting one of those casual family dinners, nothing fancy, just grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, a salad Evan barely touched. Evan's parents were out of town, so Derek came alone. He showed up with a bottle of red wine, 2 degrees too confident, and that crooked smile that always felt like it held a secret. I opened the door, still in my apron, hair pulled back, kids running around like the world was made of sugar. He looked at me and said, "Wow, you actually look more stunning with flour on your cheek." I didn't know that was possible. I laughed. I told him to shut up and come in. But something inside me fluttered, quick, electric, undeniable. He always had a way of saying things with that little twinkle in his eye, like he was joking, but maybe he wasn't. Dinner was fine. Well, it was fine technically. Evan barely said a word, his eyes glued to his phone most of the time. Max spilled juice. Emily whined about the broccoli. I was bouncing between plates and napkins, trying to keep the peace like I always did. And then there was Derek, slouched comfortably at the table, watching it all unfold like he was both amused and quietly observant. At one point, I asked Evan if he liked the chicken. He didn't even look up. Just said, "Yeah, it's good," while typing something out on his screen. And that's when Derek, without missing a beat, looked at me and said, "You know, if someone cooked like that for me, I'd at least pretend to pay attention." He said it with a grin. Everyone laughed, including Evan, because it sounded like a joke. But I knew it wasn't. Not really. Not to me. After dinner, Evan disappeared upstairs, probably to take a call or answer more emails. The kids went off to the living room with a movie. And there I was, standing at the sink again, hands in soapy water, the house humming with quiet. Derek came into the kitchen, rolling up his sleeves. "Need help?" I said no, but he stayed anyway, drying plates, leaning on the counter like he had all the time in the world. And then, as I was rinsing a glass, he said it. Soft. Low. Careful. "I don't know how he doesn't see you." There was a pause. "Then I would," and just like that, he stopped himself. Like, even he realized he'd gone too far. Or maybe he wanted to leave just enough unsaid. I turned to look at him. And we locked eyes. I should have said something light. I should have made a joke. But my throat felt tight and my heart. My heart was doing that stupid thing it hadn't done in years. It was racing. I laughed. A nervous, awkward laugh that didn't sound like me. And I said, "Stop it." He smiled. But it wasn't the usual teasing kind of smile. This one lingered. Held something deeper. Something real. And for the rest of the night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That sentence he didn't finish. The way he looked at me like I was something precious in a world that had long stopped paying attention. I told myself it was just a compliment. Just Derek being Derek. But deep down, I knew. It was just a compliment, right? That night, I couldn't sleep. Evan lay beside me, snoring softly, his back turned, like always. I stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open, hearing Derek's voice echo over and over in my head. "I don't know how he doesn't see you." I would. Those words looped like a melody I couldn't shut off. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That it was just Derek being, well, Derek. Charming. Flirtatious. A little too bold after a glass of wine. But no matter how many times I tried to explain it away, the feeling stayed. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Like he meant it. Like he'd been holding it in for a long, long time. And that did something to me. I turned onto my side, facing Evan's back. I watched his shoulder rise and fall, steady and indifferent. And suddenly, I felt like I was lying next to a stranger. When did it get this cold between us? I thought back to our last anniversary. 12 years. I spent the afternoon cooking his favorite meal, bought a new dress, lit candles. He showed up an hour late, handed me a gift bag with a generic perfume bottle, and said, "Happy anniversary," while checking a work text. We ate in silence. And later that night, when we made love, it felt more like an obligation than anything else. His hands were there. His body was there. But his mind, his heart, was somewhere else entirely. It's strange how someone can share your bed and still be miles away. I used to think love faded slowly. But now I know, sometimes it just vanishes. I kept telling myself nothing happened with Derek. I didn't cross a line. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a loyal wife. I am. But the truth is, even if nothing physical happened, something inside me shifted. And I felt it every time Derek's name came up. Every time his car pulled into the driveway. Every time his eyes found mine across a room. I started writing again. Not anything public. Just a journal I kept tucked away in my nightstand, behind old photo albums. At first, it was just thoughts. Fragments. But somehow, Derek's name found its way into every entry. I wrote about the way he smiled. The way he laughed at my terrible jokes. The way he leaned in just a little closer when we talked. I told myself I was just observing. Processing. But deep down, I knew. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way he always brought me my favorite chocolate when he visited. The way he remembered tiny details, like the book I was reading or the scent of my shampoo. The way he looked at me like I mattered. And then, I started doing things too. Little things. I wore lipstick when I knew he was coming over. I'd change into something just a little more flattering, nothing too obvious, but enough to feel seen. I'd spritz perfume right before he arrived. There was a moment, just a small one, where I caught myself smiling at the mirror before heading downstairs to greet him. And it scared me. Because that smile, it wasn't for Evan. It was for Derek. But I kept pretending. Pretending I was fine. Pretending it was all harmless. Pretending the ache inside me was just loneliness. Not desire. Not longing. I told myself I'd never let it go further. I'd never do anything. But thoughts, they're slippery things. They have a way of creeping in and making themselves at home. I'd find myself wondering what it would feel like, just once, to be held by someone who truly wanted me. Not out of routine. Not out of obligation. But because he couldn't help it. I knew I was standing too close to the edge. But I also knew. Part of me didn't want to step back. After that night in the kitchen, things didn't just go back to normal. Derek started showing up more often. At first, it seemed casual, harmless. He'd drop by with a bag of groceries, saying he happened to grab extras. He'd offer to fix something Evan hadn't touched in months, a leaky faucet, a loose door hinge, a broken drawer in the kids' room. Always with a smile. always with that same quiet presence that made the room feel different. He never overstayed. But he never rushed off, either. The kids adored him. He'd bring Max those little dinosaur toys and help Emily with her math homework. And Evan, well, he didn't seem to notice much. He was just relieved someone else was helping carry the load. I think, in some ways, Derek became the man Evan used to be. And maybe that's what made it so complicated. It rained hard one evening. One of those loud, messy storms where the sky groans and water hammers the roof like it's trying to get in. Evan had worked late and came home exhausted. He barely touched dinner before dozing off on the couch, phone slipping from his hand, TV casting blue shadows across his face. The kids were upstairs, tucked in early, scared of the thunder. I checked on them, kissed their foreheads, told them everything was okay. And then Derek showed up. He knocked lightly, holding a bottle of wine under his jacket. "I figured you might need a little something to take the edge off this weather," he said. I should have said no. But instead, I stepped aside and let him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the lights dim, rain slashing the windows behind us. And for a while, we just talked. About nothing. And about everything. He told me more about his divorce, how it fell apart slowly, the same way mine was unraveling beneath the surface. He talked about how it felt to give everything to someone who stopped noticing him. And I listened. Really listened. Because every word he said felt like a mirror I hadn't dared look into. Like he was reading my thoughts out loud. I don't know when the tone shifted. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the thunder. Or maybe it was just time catching up with us. But at one point, he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "I don't want to mess anything up. I know this is complicated. But if I ever wanted something real, something lasting, it'd be with someone like you." The words just sat there, suspended in the air between us. Like a balloon, fragile and floating, one breath away from bursting. I couldn't speak. My hands felt too still. My heart too loud. I didn't know what to say. Because a part of me wanted to cry, and another part wanted to reach across the table and hold him like he was the last honest thing in my life. But I didn't do either. We just sat there in silence. Eyes locked, breath shallow. And in that silence, something shifted again. Not loud, not dramatic. Just deeper. Like a door had quietly opened inside me, and I didn't know how to close it again. Eventually, he stood up, said he should head out before the storm got worse. I nodded. We didn't hug. We didn't touch. But we didn't need to. Something had already passed between us. Something we couldn't take back. After he left, I checked on Evan. Still asleep on the couch, phone lighting up with work notifications. And I just stood there, watching him. Trying to remember the last time he'd looked at me like I was something to reach for. Trying to remember if he ever had. That night, I didn't sleep. But it wasn't guilt that kept me up. It was curiosity. Evan had a conference that weekend. 3 days in Chicago. He barely looked up from his suitcase as he packed button-downs, ties, charger cables, cologne he hadn't worn in months. He kissed the kids goodbye, gave me a distracted peck on the cheek, and left without asking if I needed anything. Without checking in. Without even saying, "I'll miss you." Just a rushed, "I'll call you if I get a minute," and then the door closed behind him. And just like that, he was gone. The house felt heavier in his absence. Not in a painful way. More like the way silence settles when a constant background noise suddenly disappears. I cleaned, rearranged the living room, opened windows for air I didn't really need. The next morning, Derek texted, "Heard Evan's out of town. Want me to come fix that cabinet finally?" That cabinet had been broken for over 6 months. The door hung crooked, like it had given up waiting to be useful. I stared at the text for a long time. I could have said no. Should have said no. But I didn't. I replied, "Sure. Come by whenever." He showed up in the late afternoon, toolbox in hand, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy from the wind. He smelled like sawdust and something clean. Something familiar. The kids were at my sister's for the night, movie night, and popcorn with their cousins. It was just me and him. He worked quietly, focused, but every once in a while, He'd glance over at me and smile. I made dinner while he worked: rosemary chicken, roasted vegetables, a salad we'd probably forget to eat. Music played low in the background, an old playlist from my 20s that I hadn't listened to in years. It felt like a different world, a forgotten one. We moved around the kitchen like we'd done it 1,000 times. Comfortable, unspoken rhythms. Like a dance we'd somehow always known. We laughed more than we should have. Shared stories we'd never told. Poured the wine without measuring time. At one point, I reached for a glass. So did he. Our hands touched. Not brushed, touched. Skin on skin. And neither of us moved away. We just stayed there. His hand warm. Mine trembling. The air between us thick enough to drown in. He looked at me, quiet, intense, like he was searching for permission in my eyes. And then he said, "Can I tell you something? Something I've been wanting for years?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. He leaned in, so close I could feel his breath against my cheek, and he whispered, "I want you. I've always wanted you. Just once. Just for me." My heart dropped. Desire. Horror. Loneliness. It all hit me at once, colliding in my chest like a car crash I couldn't stop watching. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what I was anymore. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fall into his arms and forget everything. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I kissed him. Slow, hesitant, shaky, like my whole body was asking why even as it leaned in. His hand found the side of my face. Gentle, careful. And in that moment, I wasn't a wife. I wasn't Evan's anything. I was just a woman, aching and raw and seen. The kiss didn't last long. I pulled away first, breathless, terrified of what I'd done. He didn't say a word, just looked at me with eyes that didn't beg or apologize. And I stood there, hands shaking, pulse pounding, lips still burning. And then, I did something I never thought I would do. The moment the kiss ended, silence rushed in like a wave. Not peaceful silence. Not the kind that wraps you in calm. This one was thick, awkward, loud in a way that made every breath feel too sharp. I couldn't look at him. I turned away, grabbed the nearest dish, started rinsing it like it suddenly needed to be cleaned right then and there. He stood there behind me for a few seconds. Quiet, still, heavy. Then I heard him sigh. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice wasn't smooth this time. It was lower, tighter. "I didn't mean to push you. But I meant every word." And then he left. Just like that. No door slam. No dramatic goodbye. Just the soft click of the front door closing, and I was alone again. But not really. Because my mind wasn't quiet anymore. It was loud. Chaotic. Spinning with everything I'd felt in that kiss, and everything I wished I hadn't. I barely slept that night. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying it over and over again. The way his hand had cupped my face. The tremble in his breath. The certainty in his words. Just once. Just for me. The next morning, I made coffee like I always did. But my hands kept shaking. I spilled the creamer. I burned the toast. And when I looked in the mirror above the kitchen sink, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked like me. But her eyes were full of something else. Guilt, maybe. Fear. Longing. Evan came home that afternoon. I heard the car pull into the driveway. The crunch of tires on gravel made my stomach twist. When he walked through the door, suitcase in one hand, phone in the other, he looked exhausted. I stood at the counter, trying to act normal, pretending the floor beneath me wasn't shifting. He kissed my cheek. Routine. Empty. Conference went fine, he muttered, already typing something out on his phone. "I'm starving. What's for dinner?" I nodded. Said something bland. I think I mentioned leftovers. My voice didn't sound like mine. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. The rest of the evening moved like a fog. The kids came home. Homework, showers, bedtime stories. The usual noise, the usual rhythm. But I felt like I was watching it all from behind glass. And every time Evan looked at me, even just a passing glance, I felt completely exposed. Like he could see something. Like the kiss was still there, sitting on my lips like a confession. But he didn't say anything. Didn't ask. Didn't notice that I flinched when he brushed against me in the hallway. Later that night, while Evan snored softly beside me, my phone lit up on the nightstand. It was Derek. Just one message. I'm sorry. But I meant every word. I stared at it for a long time. Heart pounding. And then I deleted it. Not because I didn't want to see it, but because I couldn't bear to. But 10 minutes later, I opened my deleted messages. Scrolled down. Read it again. And again. And again. His words didn't go away just because I erased them. They lingered. Settled in my chest like a weight I couldn't shift. I laid there wide awake. Beside the man who didn't know me anymore. Haunted by the one who somehow did. I've asked myself the same question every single day since it happened. Am I the villain? Or am I just human? Because I didn't plan for this. I didn't go looking for it. I didn't wake up one day and decide to let another man kiss me. It wasn't calculated. It just happened. And yet, isn't that what every person says when they do something they're not supposed to? It just happened. I hate that phrase now. Because I used to believe I'd never be that person. I used to judge people who crossed lines, who cheated, who lied. And now? Now I live in a house built on silence, sleeping next to a man I once loved and wondering if one kiss has already torn the foundation apart. The guilt is real. It hangs on me like a second skin. But so is the memory. That sharp, haunting thrill of being wanted. Of being seen. Of feeling alive. And that's the part one hates the most. The part no one talks about. That the wrong thing can feel so painfully, beautifully right in the moment. After that weekend, I started pulling back. From everything. I skipped a family brunch. Told them I wasn't feeling well. When Evan asked if I wanted to go to his parents' anniversary party, I made up a reason to stay home with the kids. I couldn't look Derek in the eye. Couldn't be in the same room without feeling like my heart was going to collapse in on itself. Because he had become this presence. A shadow that hovered in every corner of my mind. Not warm anymore. Not comforting. Just dangerous. I missed him. And I hated myself for it. There were moments, quiet ones, where I'd find myself reaching for my phone just to see if he'd messaged again. He hadn't. Not since that night. And part of me was relieved. The other part? It felt like mourning. The truth is, Derek had lit a match I didn't know I was holding. And now, even with him gone, I could still feel the heat. I started questioning everything. Every moment, every choice, every glance. Was it really just a kiss? Did I betray Evan even if it didn't go further? If you crave someone else's attention, but never act on it, is that better? Or worse? I didn't have answers. I still don't. I kept thinking, should I tell Evan? Would it even matter to him? Would he even notice that something had changed? Or do I bury it? Pretend it never happened? Convince myself it was a mistake, a slip, a moment of weakness I can move on from. But here's the part that won't let me sleep. I don't know if Derek's words were about me. Or about the idea of me. Was I special? Or was I just available? A warm presence in a cold house. A woman he couldn't have. A symbol of something he missed. Would he have said those same words to any woman in my position? Any sister-in-law wearing lipstick and longing for something more? I hate that I don't know the answer. And I hate that it matters to me. Sometimes, I think about telling Derek how I feel. Other times, I want to erase every trace of that night and pretend it was all in my head. But I can't forget it. I can't unknow what it felt like to be wanted. To be chosen, if only for a second. I still do the laundry. Still pack lunches. Still smile when Evan walks through the door. But I don't feel like myself anymore. I feel like a stranger in my own life. And maybe that's the hardest part of all, knowing that a single moment, a single kiss, can unravel everything you thought you knew about yourself. What would you have done in my position? Was I wrong for needing what I never got from my husband? For wanting to be seen? Heard? Touched like I mattered? Because I keep replaying that night, that kiss, those words, just once. Just for me. And sometimes I wonder, was I really the one who crossed the line? Or was it already crossed the moment I became invisible in my own marriage? Have you ever faced a moment like that, where right and wrong blurred so completely, you couldn't tell the difference anymore? Where your heart pulled you one way and your conscience screamed the other? If you have, then maybe you'll understand me. Maybe you won't. But I need to hear from someone who gets it. Someone who knows that love isn't always clean, and sometimes loneliness is the loudest voice in the room. Tell me what you think. I'm still sitting in the middle of it all. Still trying to understand who I am and what this all means. Leave me a comment. I'll read every word. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because what we share here, these stories, they aren't just entertainment. They're truths. Raw, flawed, painful, beautiful truths. And the next one I'm about to tell you, it's even more unbelievable than this one. I sit on this bench now in the park near our house. The air is cool. Birds are chirping somewhere above me. Children's laughter floats from the playground across the path. Everything around me is normal, quiet, safe. But inside me, there's a storm I've learned to hide well. I never saw Derek again. A few weeks after that night, he moved back to the city. Said he needed a fresh start. Said very little, actually. And Evan? He never found out. Not about the kiss. Not about the feelings I buried beneath grocery lists and school pickups. He still sleeps beside me. Still scrolls through his phone. Still calls me Han without looking up. But I don't wait for his attention anymore. I know now that sometimes the people who finally see you aren't the ones you're meant to be seen by. And sometimes being noticed can cost more than being invisible ever did. I live with that knowledge, with the truth that, for one moment, my heart stepped outside the lines. And there's no going back from that. So if I leave you with anything, let it be this: be careful what you crave. Because sometimes the wish isn't the danger. It's what you're willing to do once it's made. And that's where the real story begins.